I'm going to introduce today's session slightly differently. And my guest this evening is somebody I had the privilege of meeting quite by chance very recently. Um, I don't know him at all, but what struck me the first and only time I interacted with him was that he's someone whose wisdom probably belies his young years, although I've never equated the two myself. And more importantly, it was very obvious to me that this is an individual who observes, analyzes, and interprets the world in a fairly profound and nuanced way. And I knew right then that I would love to have a conversation. I didn't know around what exactly. That also subsequently came from him until, of course, I literally got after his life and coerced him to have a dialogue. So today has turned out to be very interesting thematically as well, because well, I remember that when I was young and a certain age, I couldn't wait to grow older. That time, of course, it was chiefly in service of the fact that I'd be able to watch adult films and consume alcohol. And now, and for some time that I've been in my 40s, I can also confirm that I'm not part of a minority of allegedly older, wise people who is just pretending to adult and doesn't desperately want to be back at school again. And that is the irony that sort of encapsulates life for many of us. That there is uh, a huge dramatic change that comes about, of course, internally and in terms of our bodies and minds, but I think more uh, cataclysmically from how the world around us seems to change its set of expectations of us and from us. This entire transition from sort of being a child to inhabiting adulthood can be very disconcerting. It sort of calls into question lots of learned behavior, assumed value systems, and those are the sort of things that we will talk about. We are calling this session culture inherited versus culture curated. And I'd like to welcome you to this fresh edition of Talk Therapy brought to you by Driveway Devi. I'm Kartik on behalf of Driveway Devi, and I'm really happy that Justin is joining us all the way from a very rainy Kochi. He is a young undergrad student, very interested in literature, in gender, has a wide array of passions and interests. Your average multifaceted South Asian, because, we must label him. So, Justin, thank you very much, not just for making the time to be here, but also for suggesting what is such an important sort of area of discussion. So, welcome.
Hello, thank you. That was a really flattering introduction. It was really heartwarming. Thank you for addressing me as a multifaceted South Asian, though I would not personally agree to that, since growing up, we are met with a lot of expectations, right, on how to kind of bring about ourselves as this said multifaceted South Asian. As an Indian student, we have a lot of expectations put on, given to ourselves. And I'm someone who really failed on many levels to achieve that kind of an image or a kind of persona as such. But if I put this in tangent to today's topic of discussion, I, throughout the years, learned that to be multifaceted is perhaps to explore our own selves and define this kind of term in our own way or in our own terms. So I would not call myself multifaceted, but someone who did get the space and the chance to explore myself, as all of us did, and completely dependent on our own context and the environment which we were exposed to. But thank you so much. That was a really endearing and lovely introduction.
Well, Justin, in all sincerity, I completely take what you're saying. I respect that, and it's obviously entirely your prerogative. I will, however, quickly sneak in the fact that I think you're very modest. Now, speaking of defining and definitions, that's sort of the perfect segue for us to talk a little bit about. Um, Sets of values and other things that are defined for us during certain ages and stages of our lives, particularly, I suppose, when we're at school, which is that really interesting stage where there is a certain amount of intellectual development and awareness that has come about, but it's perhaps still not at a place where there can be a independent critical analysis. So talk a little bit about your own sort of growing up and during that phase and the kinds of systems and beliefs that you came to imbibe and perhaps at some level accept.
Yes. When we speak of life in general, in stages, um, we can kind of, for the sake of convenience and to ground this conversation to a context, we can call life a process of socialization, which it is. Sociologically, if we approach it, what is socialization? It is our engagement with all the aforementioned values, beliefs, expectations, so on and so forth. So even if I might be alone in my room, probably using social media or just sitting with my own presence, that is also a form of socialization. Now, when we consider the aspect of school and the world outside school, the process of school in stages, there are many components of life as a process of socialization involved. You can also add a few more components which may come to your mind, as I mentioned some, to make this conversation more enriching. As a sentient social being, we think, we imagine. Our life is also determined by experiences and expression. These are a few components which comes to my mind as of now. All of this have some role to play at every juncture and every moment of our life. Now, if before this conversation, I decided to sit down with my own experience throughout school and after school to think about what I will speak. Uh, so I could not gather a lot of things because of my very shaky memory, but I could recall some moments. Now, we enter school at a very nascent stage of our lives. The first level of socialization occurs at home. This is also something which has been said by the sociologist called McIver. He is someone who has studied family, and he's the most prominent person in the study of family in sociology. And he said family is the first level where socialization occurs. That is a place when we are grounded to or exposed to a kind of value system, belief system, not a very solidified, but also kind of code of ethics, how to express, how to think, how to question. And at that point of time, we don't really know how to question, right? Um, so getting up in the morning at a particular time, being a very devout believer in God, following, the religious ethos, and the general kind of idea on how to respect elders, how to talk to people around you, how to carry yourselves as a decent, civilized human being, you carry that to school. In school, we are met with another code of ethics and another code of conduct, ethos, and ways of expression. First, one of those components is the most direct one, a uniform. We are expected to stick on to the uniform which is provided to us, and also maintain our own physical features such as hair, facial hair, and yeah, the way we roll our sleeves, so on and so forth. Now there have been many reasons as to why this has been justified. They say uniform is supposed to bring about homogeneity, to make students tolerant towards each other, which is all very fair. And at the same time, there have been criticisms towards uniform, saying that it is a very colonial kind of something which we have adopted from the imperial ages. All of that is fair, but when we critically examine uniform and we talk about homogeneity or unity, the question which arises is, are we attempting to homogenize students, or are we trying to teach them unity and diversity? There was this one particular case which happened in Kerala very recently of a student who was not allowed to wear the hijab in school, because of the code of uniform which was specified. Now, the defendants of that case said that the constitution has no sort of it does not oppose uniform as such, and these kind of restrictions made, okay, fair, from the constitutional point of view that is justified. But when we look at the institution of uniform, we should always look at, are we aiming at homogeneity, or are we aiming at unity and diversity?
So I want to quickly jump in here with your permission, and
Right.
please bear in mind that I'm not a student of this subject, so you'll have to forgive ignorances. But also, from my limited understanding, of course, there are various sort of justifications offered for the uniform to exist, from or shared pride in the institution, etc., etc. Having said that, I think you've hit the nail on the head, because if I'm understanding you correctly, by its the context in which we use the term uniformity in modern parlance is not the most positive or flattering term.
Exactly.
It is disparaging, and it is labeling, and it is sort of making a very specific an identified tribe. Now, I don't know what kind of celebration that is, because, yeah, it's uniformity is to me very, very negative, and unity is completely different in my understanding.
Exactly. And uniformity is pretty much synonymous to conformity. And
Absolutely.
it's no surprise that these two words are rhyming as well. And all of us come from a background of gender, a background of class, a background of caste, so on and so forth. So when we try to put all of that aside and step into the premises of a school by wearing the same kind of dress, certain aspects of it are given notice. Now, if you are supposed to wear a long sleeve shirt, the manner in which you roll it and you maintain those rolls throughout the day, that is something which is observed. The way you tuck in your shirt, that is also something that is noticed. And it is, I don't know how it directly gets or directly or indirectly gets related to your class location. Perhaps this is how people dress at home. These are the assumptions which come up. Or do you do not
Would
know
it
how
be
to?
fair to say, and just extending your very relevant example, that it can become, in some ways, even more toxic? Because I know for a fact that when it comes to girls at school, and the length of their skirts
Exactly.
has all kinds of, it's an entire code for, the way they are and their characters.
Exactly. I mean, girls as little as, I don't know, ages 5, 6, 7. They are slut shamed in school by, because of the length of their skirt. Now they themselves do not have an understanding as to why this is considered to be problematic. I've had a few people tell me they were as little as, I don't know, lesser than 5 when they had their first experience of slut shaming, which
Wow.
was at home and at the school, which was either preschool or nursery level. And that is actually very concerning. You are, first of all, trying to make the entire set of students very uniform. You don't give them any room for physical comfort. Now, when we talk about physical comfort, it is not something which only concerns our physical mobility. Mobility is again a wider thing, and it is also something to do with how we feel our relationship with our own body. Now, this is my experience towards standard 10. Around standard 7 and standard 10, I did not have a very good relationship with my uniform because the way it fit my body is something which I felt uncomfortable with. I personally felt either my body structure is something that does not go well with the uniform. I later on went to make alterations or buy cloth as it is and get it stitched with my
Hmm.
own measurements. However, even that did not work. And there were a lot of components involved in the uniform. Right? You have trousers, shirt, and then tie, and a lot of those things. Not It just did not just impact my mobility, but also my the relationship which I had with my body, and also the length of my hair. In India, they directly relate it with decency and I don't know, keeping yourself very masculine, keeping yourself very clean. I don't know how the length of your hair is associated with cleanliness because you can shampoo it and make it clean. Hai na? Um, I had to
It's it's
maintain it.
it's
Yes.
uniformity at play again.
Exactly, it's uniformity at play
Yeah.
again. All the boys are supposed to have the same length of hair. Nothing should be very stylish. I don't know what is that. What's that exactly supposed to mean? Girls are supposed to make plaits,
Yeah.
and even the band which they use or the rubber band should be of the same color. All of those things. And because I was required to have short hair, I had a lot of body dysmorphia. I did not like how the short hair was, for how it looked in comparison to the shape of
Sure.
my face.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was in college that I got the chance to grow out my hair a little bit, and I have a more positive relationship with my the way I look right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to wear a mask back then. Um, we had online classes from class 8 to class 9, and then in 10 standard, offline classes resumed. And
And
we were
and and
asked to
and
carry
very
a mask.
quickly, Justin, tell me. I
Yes.
mean, while I understand and find it sad, but understand that you were wearing a mask for reasons of your own discomfort. I'm sure the fact that you were wearing one was itself called out.
It was luckily the timing kind of gave the chance to not get it called out
Oh, so it was
because
COVID-ish.
exactly. This was the time when these lockdown relaxations were happening. It was in the process. Schools were starting to reopen, and we were required to wear a mask.
Okay.
However,
Well.
I carried this fashion for a longer period of time. I guess throughout 10th standard,
Hmm.
I recently came across some pictures of myself wearing a mask, and I wondered, okay, I never do that now because it is very uncomfortable. I used to wear
Of
glasses on top
course.
of that.
Oh
Wearing a
gosh.
mask and having glasses is like having a cloudy layer on
Yeah,
your
yeah, yeah,
glasses, and
yeah,
also it's
yeah,
difficult to breathe.
yeah,
But I realized it was because of the relationship which I had with my body, um, which has something directly to do with the kind of uniform and the code of conduct imposed upon me.
yeah,
The
yeah.
second thing which comes to my mind is sports. Now you see, gender is a performance, not just gender, the way you express yourself and the way you carry yourself, your existence kind of becomes a performance. The way you carry yourself in school, all these value systems, belief systems, your social background, social location, it does not just manifest itself through the forms we know, it also embodies a kind of performance.
Hmm.
So in school, you are supposed to carry yourself in that particular kind of performance. Sports is something which is highly gendered. Now, if I recall or bring back my memory, I was someone who was not very physical in the conventional sense. In standard 6 and 7, I used to take part in sports. I used to play kabaddi. Kabaddi was the only sport which I used to participate in because I could go into the field without knowing, the set of rules which is usually required for, cricket or football. And I'm someone who does not really easily grasp technique or methods. And kabaddi was the safe space for me. And in class 6 and 7, I mean, that's the point when you're just starting to hit puberty. And puberty is the point where you learn a lot of differences and have and develop a new kind of relationship with your body. Then COVID happened. There was lockdown for like 2.5 years. I came back to school. Then what I remember is I used to stay away from the field whenever the bell used to ring for games period. I used to carry a book with me, sit at the corner of the ground, and just read. And I got called out for it a lot of times as to why are you not very physical? You're not supposed to study all the time. You should be a very active human being. Take part in games as well. Study is not everything about life. And I agreed. I was never a studious person back in 10th standard. I was someone who performed very poorly in mathematics and science. English was my forte because that is something which I liked. And I was not studying. When I carried a book with me to the playground, it was not me studying, it was me escaping.
Right, but
Uh,
and also that clearly points to the irony of systems that are imposed, right? Because what
exactly.
you were assumed to be and labeled what you weren't.
Exactly. Sports made me conscious about the way I walk, the way I run, the way I carry myself, the way I speak as well. Because in the playground, when you play games like cricket, football, kabaddi, there is a kind of language involved as well, which resonates with the conventional kind of
Yeah,
masculinity.
yeah.
The movement. I have seen children trying to mimic playground movements or the movements of a footballer or of a cricketer.
Hmm.
I'm someone who did not resonate with any of that, and I first physically felt very uncomfortable. And this is when you are now challenged with, slurs and names, and you are seen as someone who is not fitting, or not very masculine, or you are not fitting their label,
Correct.
which is very bioessentialist. They think that your biological composition has something, everything to do with social norms. These are two aspects of school life.
Now,
And something another,
before we
yes.
move on, if I may, because we sort of based our discussion on this uh, conflict and contrast between certain values that we inherit, stroke are imposed, versus when we start discovering ourselves and defining some of that for ourselves and by ourselves. Um, I want to just get a quick point of view from you. When we go to school, of course, you mentioned a couple of very significant sources of conflict, stereotyping. But does it also not happen, or can it also not happen, that even if we assume the fact that in a particular institution or school, by and large, the cohort, is coming from similar families, similar backgrounds, similar cultures, still there are bound to be children who represent very different ideologies from one's own. Uh, what has been your observation in this regard specifically?
Thank you so much for reminding me of that, because this is something which I had in mind before sitting for this conversation. It just I happened to forget it suddenly. This is something which is very significant and plays a huge role in this discussion, because now I studied in a kind of semi-urban area, you could say. Now, depending on the geographical location of your school or the place where you grew up, the kind of agency which you will have in school is also affected. Now, there's always a kind of uniformity. I studied in a co-ed English medium school, and because India is such a kind of society so governed by caste and class hierarchies, you will have very specific kind of or a class or a group of people having a larger population in these schools or dominating the student body. And in my immediate environment, I had people coming from a business background or people whose parents were, quite well placed.
Hmm.
And also the cultural and social and ethnic backgrounds which they had were more or less, which, what to say, there was not much room to express difference. Everyone
Hmm.
was different, but they did not have the room to express that difference. And being someone who studied in Odisha while being a South Indian, I also faced a lot of uh, negative experiences owing to that. Because in those regions of India, they have a particular image of who a South Indian is,
Hmm.
and they
Hmm.
would expect you to be that way.
Correct.
Similarly, in South India, if you are a North Indian, you would be expected to be a
Sure.
certain way.
Sure.
That is one thing. And when I spoke about your uniform, the way you roll your sleeves, the way you wear your clothes, that is immediately linked with your social background, your class, caste, economic, and ethnic background by the people around you.
Hmm.
And this is perhaps how you carry yourself in school. The lunchbox is something which plays another huge role. The kind of
Hmm.
food you bring, the kind of smell that comes from your
Right.
lunchbox.
Right.
A student is always met with the confusion as to what should I carry in my lunchbox. Should I stick to biscuits or something which does not create a lot of smell, something which is visually appealing or visually does not create a lot of confusion in the classroom, and something which does not raise a lot of questions. I
So
remember,
it's,
yeah,
it's, I don't think it's a coincidence that actually it's all sort of going back to that same thing of conformity and uniformity.
exactly. You are trying, essentially trying to make everyone uniform or homogeneous instead of expressing the diversity. Now, there is a sociologist called John Dewey. He said that a school is a mirror of society. Pretty much, you are. This is the first place where you are exposed to technically the first place. It's after family, of course. You are exposed to different kinds of social hierarchies, different systems of society, very aptly. However, in a more kind of fettered and controlled sort of environment. Now, when I was talking of the lunchbox, there are moments that students try to bring something which does not raise a lot of questions in order to escape the burden of explaining what is there in the lunchbox. Now, you would be questioned in terms of smell and the kind of food which you bring. I remember steamed bananas is something which is a part of our cuisine. And bringing steamed bananas over there would raise the question, are these bananas rotten? So these are some of the dilemmas which we are exposed to when we are a child. And that is at one, in through one perspective, we learn of difference. These are the cultural differences which we have. On the other perspective, we learn shame, how to feel shame, what to feel shameful about in our culture, what not to feel shameful about in our culture. So I really like how the document which you sent me about the dialogue which we will have called, you know, it said culture which is inherited and something which has to do with agency and autonomy. Very aptly put, because agency is something which matters a lot. Now, till a point of time, I did not have a lot of friends or people around me. Then, when I got to learn about my own differences, that I do not conform or I'm unable to conform physically and mentally, I happened or I was lucky enough to find a circle which gave me that support or resonated with me. At the same, now our experience is curated by the agency. Before me realizing a lot of things pertaining to this, the agency which I was a part of, that kind of made me conform to masculinity and have a very specific kind of outlook towards my culture. And after that particular juncture, I had a new set of different experiences. Now,
Justin, very quickly before we get into in sort of the second half of this whole thing, which you've kind of preempted, I do want to address one fairly important thing. I think it's fair to say that A, at a fundamental level, because in our country we have such a, broadly speaking, rudimentary understanding and focus on mental health and wellness itself, that in that already deprioritized pecking order, things that we are talking about, phenomena that we are discussing, wouldn't even figure on that list. A lot of this is expressed through microaggressions. A lot of this is sort of passive. Um, how does one, or how did you, if at all you did, or you later realized that all of this that was happening, what kind of an impact did it eventually have on your headspace, on your mental health?
It very much affected the way I see myself, my self-image, the relationship with my body. I did struggle a lot with mental health during this particular time. And now in school, I was a student of home science, and the maximum it teaches you about the school or the experiences you will have with your peers is peer pressure. You will be experiencing peer pressure. That is all that they say about struggles a student has in school.
Yep.
And there is always not a very healthy support system as well. Nowadays, schools are having counselors and counseling centers. Now, one issue is in most of the schools, the person sitting in the counseling centers are not trained psychologists, and there is also a generational gap. So students, they do not have the option always to confide in their peers, to confide in their teachers, to confide in their parents, and also to confide in this so-called counselor who there is no guarantee if this counselor will keep all this information confidential, because there have been instances where this has been breached.
So,
So there
so
is no, yeah,
you're not that I'm at all trying to shut you up, but you are speaking to somebody who's unfortunately and tragically intimately aware of what's going on, because that is, I mean, I've had kids tell me quite plainly that, we feel that the counselor is basically spying either for the management or for our parents. There is also the unfortunate realities of many of these counselors being used by the schools to teach the psychology subject in grade 11 and 12, and
exactly.
preoccupy them with setting papers and correcting answer sheets, etc. So there are all kinds of problems. In any case, to begin with, look at the ratio. It's completely skewed. You have one person there who's not even a full-fledged mental health professional to deal with the student body upwards of 500 kids, 1,000,
Right.
1,500.
I mean, statistically, it has been proven that India has a dearth of teachers compared to its huge population of students. On top of that, you try to appoint someone from the teacher's body itself as a counselor, and even the person who is appointed from outside does not really always have the
Yeah,
required qualifications, and they come from a kind of background and generation who may not really resonate with
yeah,
the students.
yeah.
That is one reason why students do not feel comfortable enough to open up to the teachers as well. In my experience, it was in college that my professors are relatively very young people. And coming from the English department, I guess it is because of that. That's one factor behind it. I could kind of open up to them about a lot of things. Again, because most of them, uh, we relate over experiences which we had in school. The kind of critical thinking is encouraged, though that is not the case in every college atmosphere. But again, that's one drawback in schools. You are, first of all, you are expected to carry yourself in that very traditional way. If you breach that, you will also be questioned by the counselor. These are experiences which I've had, and that is one way you undergo a lot of stress.
Isn't it
Um,
terribly ironic that a school, which is, in theory, that one place where you ought to undertake a journey of discovery, is what is actually caging you? It's really sad.
exactly. I mean, schools are ideally supposed to be a place where a student feels very open. In theory, this is the place where they explore their childhood and have the most happy moments of their childhood. But I've seen so many students who are carrying the head weight and the stress which we kind of always think adults carry.
Yeah.
I mean, through academic stress, the kind of content which they're exposed to, and there is something very specific which I really wanted to talk about: the importance given to arts and humanities in schools. Now, the process or the act of imagining or imagination, it is something very psychological, very personal. At the same time, it is a very political act. Um, Now, if when we study subjects like English, drawing, music, we are essentially imagining. And in schools, not much importance is given to these subjects and to the social sciences as well. Now, all of these students, they
Sorry,
come from.
again, just to
Yeah,
add to what you're saying, not only is it not given importance, another huge disservice is done additionally, which is something that used to certainly happen in my time when our generation was at school. I suspect in a lot of schools it still happens in our country, where in any case, the powers that be, again, ironically, are the ones who are clearly assigning a pecking order by saying, oh, the
exactly.
science ones are the brightest, and then the commerce walas, and then the absolute good for nothings do the rest.
Exactly. I mean, I was very invisible in school until 10th standard because I was very bad at math and science. But after 12th, after 11th, when I took up humanities and started to do a bit better at it, that's when I became a little more visible. But then again, you're always seen with that kind of scorn, or you're not regarded with a lot of importance. Okay, you're just study humanities. It's
Yeah.
not something which carries a lot of labor, while it does. And at the school level, you see students also not giving much importance to it. Not at all their fault, because that is what they've been taught. And towards ninth and 10th, if you ask any student, they're like, if you look at toppers interviews, okay, this is something which bothers me. At every result day, you'll have interviews of toppers.
Hmm.
All of them are like, okay, I'm either going to the medical field or I'm going into engineering. I've always already started my coaching for JEE or NEET.
Right.
Um, Now, when I spoke about imagination, after I took up humanities and studied subjects like history, political science, sociology, I could imagine an alternative political reality or an alternative social reality. All of us are bound down by power structures, by social background, a lot of that things. Literature, social sciences, they allow us to imagine of an alternative political reality, which can be a possibility.
Yeah.
When you think, when you imagine, you find ways to kind of materialize it, or you advocate for it. However, when those subjects are not given any importance, now always literature in school is always taken out of its context, and the political aspect of it is never discussed. It is never given importance. You're always given a, what is the person told? Okay, literature and art is something which a person does during the leisure. It is the kind of hobby, gives you a lot of comfort. Literature is also supposed to make you uncomfortable. The main problem in schools is that the education which they give you in schools, how they expose you to social issues, it sits very comfortably with the social structure and the social inequality. It does not challenge it. Rather, it just says that it's opposing, but it sits very comfortably with it. So, when you also control how students imagine or think about the world, or imagine an alternative political reality or the world around themselves, how they can manage the relationship that they have with people around them, that also affects their own self image and the relationship with the external environment.
Most certainly. And then, I mean, we actually sit and wonder why we, as a country and as a nation, and despite having such a young population, don't have inventors, but just executors.
Exactly. There is no innovation, rather, there's just execution.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think what you've been able to encapsulate is such critical, hard areas and facets in which this kind of inherited or imposed system has this very, very negative and limiting and stifling impact. Because it's one thing to have a intellectual theoretical discussion, but it's really, really important to contextualize it. And that's basically what we've ended up doing, which is these three, four, five very specific areas that people can see. And it's all around us. And it's very sad. And I think that, which is also why, um, I must pat myself on the back when I said that the way see any young individual, I'm going to sound like 100 years old now, but when I come across somebody such as yourself who is observing and analyzing and reimagining paradigms afresh, that is a indispensable, non-negotiable function in order to move forward and evolve into a healthy and content society. So it always, sort of fills me with endless optimism and hope, which will embalm me in my old
Lovely.
age.
So,
Great. So, I mean, this is one of those discussions that can go on and on, but I think we've had a very fruitful beginning. Maybe we can take a little break and a couple of months, come back, do a follow-up dialogue, see what we're feeling as you grow into newer systems and experiences. But for now, thank you very much. That was most enlightening and really genuinely very, very important. I wish more young parents, more people who are starting schools and who are in positions of power to influence these kinds of realms ponder these points rather than just building their institutions on the basis of that very myopic end goal, which I understand of, oh, my school needs to get a certain amount of results in the board exams in order to get, therefore, a certain number of admissions in the next session. And I think a lot of the compromises that take place and the limitations that get placed consciously or inadvertently are because there's no vision. It's just damage control.
exactly. I have one conclusion to make.
Please
I'm
do.
sorry if I'm dragging this because I'm
Not at
someone who
all.
loves
Not
to
at all.
talk and, make narratives. But I would like to make a statement. The most objective reality is that reality is subjective. And when you proceed out of school, you kind of get the environment to learn that, okay, people around you, when they step out of that uniformity, the uniform, and also life and the way you carry yourself in general, there are people who do not share the same lived experience as you. And your worldview is often limited by your lived experience. And when you're exposed to other kind of experiences, other kind of social realities, that's when you realize, okay, perhaps what I learned, what I taught myself, or what was taught to me is not really the reality. That is where you kind of experience a conflict and you work towards crystallizing your worldview after that.
I think that's very eloquently put. And what I understand from it is that there is no such thing as one singular reality, right?
Exactly.
And the openness to that, the awareness and openness to that starts coming after that very significant symbolic shedding. When we get rid of that uniform at the end of school, we are essentially liberating ourselves from of course, the obvious drudgery of being trapped in that terrible uniform every
Very
morning,
much.
but also just in every other way, shape, and form in our lives. And then I think we get out of that cocoon in which we have uh, you know, s- uh, uh, somehow found a safe space. And we realize that, geez, there's just the world is absolutely infinite. Um, and we grow a genuine acceptance, appreciation, and hopefully a celebration of that diversity.
Literally and metaphorically, you get out of the uniform.
Absolutely. So here's to staying firmly out of the uniform and going on exploring till we are breathing. Thanks so much.
Exactly. Thank you so much.